Hello, everyone. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. There's a vulnerability in some software that's used by internet service providers and managed service providers, and there's an exploit that's been tracked back to the Chinese government, something you should know about if you're an ISP or an MSP. Be right back with more. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So I wanted to talk about this. Actually, I will talk about this. So I want to let you know, first off, that as we go through this, that if you have any need for cybersecurity services, we can help you. We've got managed cybersecurity services available, and you can see that on our website. If you just go to zcorm.com and look under, in the menu, just look under cybersecurity, or go to zcorm.com/cybersecurity, and you can get there. So make sure you check that out, because what I'm going to tell you about is something that you need to be aware of if you're an internet service provider, or again, a managed service provider. So if so, you can go to our website, reach out and get with us, and we can help you. If you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button, and you'll get notified of things like this and other industry news. And also, if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up on that. But I wanted to talk about this article here, and then actually, go through a couple of other things related to this. So you see here, Chinese government hackers targeted U.S. internet providers with zero-day exploit, researchers say. So this is why it's really important as an internet service provider to make sure that your network is protected. And you'll see that here as we read through this, that you are kind of a conduit to other industries or other infrastructure and organizations that could then be vulnerable because you are providing services to them. And this is another reason, as you look at your cybersecurity, that you need to be thinking about the supply chain and who is, software companies that you're using that could be used by an attacker to attack you, those kinds of things. So this kind of all falls in there. And as broadband operators, this is also obviously mission critical for you. So you are in the business of providing network access. So in this case, this is the kind of thing that could be lurking there and then used later to attack the United States. So it's not only, you've got all kinds of risks out there and reasons that somebody might want to attack you. One is, again, a nation state that might want to get in there and just lurk around, see what's going on, maybe steal some information that they can, but never really do anything until they really want to. For example, if for some reason there's a conflict and they want to hamper our abilities, they could go in and then suddenly make use of various servers and organizations they've attacked in order to help shut things down. So that's, I think, more what this was. But then there's also you're vulnerable to people that want to do ransomware, those kinds of things. You need to be concerned about that. So again, check out zcorm.com/cybersecurity, and you can get some information on how we can help you do it a lot more easily and less expensive than if you try to build your own security operations center. So you see here, looks like it was Chinese hackers. So this is in TechCrunch. Group of hackers linked to the Chinese government use a previously unknown vulnerability in software to target U.S. internet service providers, security researchers have found. The group, known as Typhoon, was exploiting the zero-day flaw, meaning the software maker was unaware of it before having time to patch. And that's, unfortunately, that's usually where the biggest risk is, because you can have your standard kind of virus protection software that is based on patterns that are already known. So let's take typical virus protection software that a customer might have at home, a subscriber. And they've got that software and it's looking for patterns. So there are known viruses out there, and that the pattern database gets bigger all the time, I guess. And if it sees something come in, like a file come in that matches that pattern, then it flags it, it will block it, that kind of thing. But a lot of times there are zero-day exploits where the software company is not aware that there's an issue. So if you're one of the first people that get infected by that, then you've got that issue. And then there are also, one of the things that's important about some of the protections that you can have now with really robust cybersecurity is it looks at not just patterns that are already known, but behaviors. So that if you've got somebody monitoring, you've got people in technology monitoring your network 24/7, then they can see patterns and behaviors. It could be something that is normal kinds of things that would happen on your network, but maybe an unusual behavior that is then flagged. And then somebody can look at that and drill in and see, wait a minute, is this normal? Is this a person, or is this some kind of an attack or a hacker that's doing this? So these are things that you need to consider, considering the sophisticated nature these days of cyber attacks. So it says here, the group known as, so exploited a 0-day, and it was exploited in something called Versa Director. That's a piece of software. It says made by Versa Networks, according to researchers at Black Lotus Labs, which is part of the cybersecurity firm Lumen. Now, Lumen, this is the same Lumen. This is Lumen that was CenturyLink that they provide network services for internet service providers. So, I think they can provide internet service to larger enterprises, and they also provide, I think, maybe some SD-WAN kinds of services and whatnot, whereas CenturyLink was aimed at broadband subscribers. I think this is kind of where Lumen is these days. Versa sells software to manage network configurations and is used by internet service providers and managed service providers, which makes Versa a critical and attractive target for hackers, the researchers wrote. This is the latest discovery of hacking activities carried out by Typhoon, a group that's believed to be working for the Chinese government. The group focuses on targeting critical infrastructure, and including communications and telecom networks, with the goal of causing real-world harm in the event of a future conflict with the United States. So ISPs are critical infrastructure, basically. So you need to be, if you're an ISP, you need to be thinking of yourself that way, because you are, and primarily because of the services you provide, but also because of the fact that you're providing services to other critical infrastructure organizations, for example, utilities and others that are going to be getting possibly your internet services. So need to be thinking of yourself as critical infrastructure and protecting your network that way. U.S. government officials testified earlier this year that hackers aim to disrupt any U.S. military response in a future anticipated invasion of Taiwan. So again, this is the kind of exploit that's out there that would be waiting for something like that to happen, and then that's when they would do the damage. In other cases, like I say, it could be ransomware, and in that situation, they'll get on the network, and sometimes they really might stay on there for a month, 3 months, 6 months, while they're collecting as much as they can. They'll be ready to lock down the data, your data, at any time, but they're in there seeing as much as they can get access to while they're doing that. So you could not realize that somebody's been in your network and doing things, and you might not know that until the point where it's like, oh my gosh, they've got all our data and they've locked it down. So they don't always hit you right when they get in there. The hackers' goals, according to Black Lotus Labs researchers, were to steal and use credentials on downstream customers of the compromised corporate victims. So again, you've got this Versa software that then is being used, and then that's being used to get further downstream to maybe enterprise customers or others that are customers of these ISPs. So that's, again, why supply chain is important to be looking at when you're talking about cybersecurity. And by the way, cybersecurity is something, as an ISP, I think eventually, it probably won't be long before the federal government decides that ISPs need to be proactive about getting cybersecurity in place. That's already the case if you're going to be getting federal dollars from certain programs, like USDA Reconnect added a cybersecurity requirement. The BEAD program, if you're going to be getting BEAD funding, and we've now got 2 states now that are, I think it's 2 only at this point, but we've got 2 states that are accepting applications for BEAD. And a requirement of BEAD is that you have a cybersecurity plan that is comparable to the NIST cybersecurity framework. So there's a lot in that. You need to be looking at that. It could be a requirement for you in the future, just as an ISP. But if you're going to get BEAD funding, you're going to have to have that. You're going to have that plan in place. Not just the plan, obviously, but everything, technology and the people to be able to carry out that plan as well. And again, that's where we can help you. So check that out. Check out our site. In other words, the hackers were targeting Versa servers as crossroads, where they could then pivot into other networks connected to the vulnerable Versa servers. Mike Horka, security researcher who investigated the incident, told TechCrunch in a call. This wasn't limited to just telecoms, but managed service providers and internet service providers. A managed service provider, what they do, these tend to be IT companies, a lot of times smaller, not really big IT companies, but they help smaller companies that don't have IT departments. So they will go in there as a managed service provider, and they will help manage the servers, make sure that everything's patched. They have the latest patches on the servers, and they make configuration changes and do the kinds of things that a IT team would do. And they do that remotely using remote software. I think the Versa software is part of that, the toolkit that they would use, one of the types of tools that they would use to do that. And it's the same with maybe ISPs that are doing some remote WAN management. Yeah, Horka said these internet and networking companies are targets themselves, very likely because of the access they could potentially provide to additional downstream customers. So again, if you've got an MSP or an ISP that's doing management of other networks using this software and you've got access to that software, then that means you got access to those other networks downstream. Horka said he found 4 victims in the United States, 2 ISPs, 1 MSP, and an IT provider, and 1 victim outside of the U.S., an ISP in India. Black Lotus Labs did not name the victims. So again, this is just people using that software, but it is something to be aware of. It's for 2 reasons. One, if you have the software, obviously you want to make sure that you are locked down. And then secondly, this is just one way that somebody can get in is through software like this. There could be other software, there could be other vulnerabilities in your network that you're not aware of. That's one reason that vulnerability assessment is important as part of your cybersecurity plan, making sure that you're constantly looking at where you may be vulnerable and what you need to do to prevent as best as possible an attack. Versa's chief marketing officer told TechCrunch in an email that the company has patched the 0-day identified by Black Lotus Labs. They confirmed the vulnerability and issued an emergency patch. We've since issued a comprehensive patch and distributed this to all customers. Mayor told TechCrunch that Versa itself was able to confirm the flaw and observe the APT attacker taking advantage of it. Black Lotus Labs said it alerted the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency, CISA, the 0-day vulnerability and the hacking campaign. On Friday, CISA added the 0-day to its list of vulnerabilities. The agency warned that these types of vulnerabilities are frequent attack vectors for malicious cyber actors and pose significant risk to the federal enterprise. Now, here is Lumen's blog on this. So a little more information here, maybe repeating some of it, but see here, just to kind of drill in further. This vulnerability is found in the Versa software-defined wide area network applications and affects all Versa Director versions prior to this particular version here, 22.1.4. So it's Versa Director where the exploit is, or the vulnerability, or was. Versa Director servers manage the network configurations for clients running the SD-WAN software and are often used by internet service providers and MSPs. Director servers enable the orchestration of Versa's SD-WAN functionality, positioning them as a critical and attractive target for threat actors seeking to extend their reach within enterprise management. Again, that's not just within the company that has Versa, but downstream from that as well. I was looking up that name earlier. So Black Lotus Labs defined a unique custom tailored web shell that is tied to this vulnerability, which we call Versa Mem. So they're calling it Versa Mem. This web shell's primary purpose is to intercept and harvest credentials, which would enable access into downstream customers. Again, that's a critical aspect of this, into the downstream customers' networks as an authenticated user. VersaMem is also modular in nature and enables the threat actors to load additional Java code to run exclusively in memory. The threat actors gain an initial administrative access over an exposed Versa management port intended for a high availability pairing of director nodes, which leads to exploitation and the deployment of the VersaMem web shell. Black Lotus Labs highly encourages entities running Versa Director to upgrade to version 22.14 or later. The VersaMem web shell is a sophisticated jar or JR web shell that was uploaded to VirusTotal on July 7, 2024 with the file name versatest.png. It's an interesting name. But you see all the way back here to June 7th, and this was discovered after that, and just now the patch has come out just I think a few days ago. So the VersaMem shell serves two primary functions. It captures plain text user credentials. So right there, you can see why this is so serious, is that if you can compromise this VersaMem shell, then you are able to get these clear text passwords, and therefore you got credentials right into this system and into that system and any system downstream from that you would be managing through that. Dynamically loads in memory Java classes. The functionality described above occurs in memory only, and no Java files on disk are modified to enable the hooks. This significantly improves the actor's chances of avoiding detection. In addition, other than password interception functionality, all additional Java classes that the actor sends would be loaded in memory only and not available anywhere on disk. So again, this does make it harder to detect, where you can't have a pattern file that you're looking for, where you're looking for something that would be identified very quickly because it matches a pattern of a piece of malware. It has to be done basically on seeing odd behavior or something like that, again, which is going to require sophisticated technology and people then looking at that technology and then digging deeper. Black Lotus Labs initially observed anomalous traffic aligning with the possible exploitation of several U.S. victims, Versa Director servers, between at least June 12th and mid-July 2024. So you can see the time frame that all this was taking place. And there's a lot more information in here. I linked to this, by the way, the original TechCrunch article and this. I also linked to Versa's blog, which talks about it. A few more things in here. Impacted customers failed. So it's almost like they're blaming the customer here. Of course, it is partially the customer's fault if they didn't do this, but then again, there was this vulnerability that they had to patch, right? But they say here, impacted customers failed to implement system hardening and firewall guidelines mentioned above, and they're talking about here. They say, they start out by saying, hey, we've had these published firewall requirements and system hardening requirements since 2015 and 2017, and here we are in 2024. So they're saying, hey, we've had guidelines to help protect against something like this since then. So they say impacted customers failed to implement those guidelines, the system hardening and firewall guidelines mentioned above, leaving a management port exposed on the internet that provided the threat actors with initial access. So again, that was partially the fault of those that didn't implement those guidelines, but also obviously there was a vulnerability in that Versa was unaware of, that they had to patch. So Versa has released a patch for the vulnerability, and they are actively working with all customers to ensure the patch and system hardening guidelines are applied. Exploitation status. This vulnerability has been exploited in at least one known instance by an advanced persistent threat actor. So I'm not sure why it's just one instance, since Lumen found several people that had this on there. Maybe they're talking about this advanced persistent threat actor. That could be, I don't know, China, I don't know. Although the vulnerability is difficult to exploit, it's rated high and affects all Versa SD-WAN customers using Versa Director that have not implemented the system hardening and firewall guidelines. So again, you need to patch the system, and you need to make sure that you're following their guidelines, which are listed here at the top. And I did link to this. So again, very important. Cybersecurity is getting more and more important because you've got nation states, you've got just script kiddies out there that don't really have to know anything about coding, but they can go out and buy access to ransomware kits to go out and then attack people. So you need to be prepared for that. So like I said, check out our website here, and we provide all kinds of cybersecurity services. You don't have to get them all, but everything from a vulnerability assessment, a NIST assessment, like I mentioned. So if you want to know, hey, what do I need to do to get NIST compliant if you're going to get BEAD funding? We can do Security Operations Center as a service. And the key there is it's as a service. So you don't need to set up your own SOC or Security Operations Center where you've got all of the technology and you've got the people there monitoring it 24/7, right? Because it's known that hackers do this stuff late at night when people are not watching, right? So early in the morning, late at night is when you're most vulnerable. So you've got people with the Security Operations Center that need to be there 24/7 doing live active monitoring, and we can provide that as a service along with endpoint detection and response, honeypots, different kinds of things that will protect your network, discover vulnerabilities, do threat assessments. You have access to security experts. So check us out there. And as I mentioned, you can just reach out on the website or send us an email, give us a call, and we'll be happy to help you there. And again, if you learned something here, if you'd please give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate that. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell, and you will be notified when I'm live. Thanks for joining me today, and I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Bye-bye.